Good evening, everyone. This is Jana London, founder of the Natural Women's Council. I wanted to take this opportunity tonight to thank you all so much for supporting us with our peaceful assembly that we did yesterday, Wednesday, May 10th, outside the Department of Education on Marlborough Street in Dublin. It was a peaceful assembly, and the purpose of the assembly was for men, women, we had mummies, daddies, some teachers speak to show that we do not consent to the new changes proposed in the SPHE RSE curriculum, particularly those around gender, ideology, and pornography. So I want to take this opportunity tonight to discuss the campaigns that we've launched to date, walk through the changes for the new proposed curriculum, and talk about some outstanding questions that I have, and most of all, what actions you can take. So the campaigns to date, on January 26, 2023, outside Leinster House, the Natural Women's Council, in partnership with Lawyers for Justice Ireland, Parents' Rights Alliance, and the Irish Education Alliance, launched two campaigns simultaneously: the library book campaign and the school curriculum campaign. The library book campaign was because we have been finding very sexually explicit, indoctrinating books in the children's section of the library. We are demanding that these books be vetted, risk assessed, and moved to the adult section of the library. So despite what the media has spun and the county councillors in the libraries suggesting that we're wanting to burn or ban books, that is not the case. We simply want these books moved from the children's section to the adult section, where they're more age appropriate for an adult audience. We launched the school campaign as well, and there's letters for both of those. You can find those on irisheducationalliance.com website, and there's a tab for all the different campaigns that we're running, everything from the school curriculum to the library to writing a letter to complain to the ladies' GAA about biological males playing against our girls in sport. So all the campaigns are on irisheducationalliance.com. So have the campaigns made a difference? I think so. We've seen some small wins. For example, we have seen the book by Juno Dawson, This Book is Gay, be removed from the school shelves and the recommended reading list for schools. Although we want to celebrate this very small win, we can't take our eye off the ball. There are dozens, I think there's over 55 other books that we're going through, many of which are also inappropriate for children, as well as a school curriculum to tackle. But we must celebrate the small win and realize it is making a difference. The campaigns and the work that we're doing across the country it's tremendous, and we must keep the pressure on. The only way that this will stop is by power of public pushback in great numbers. We can't have a handful of people scattered around writing letters to schools, calling principals, or going in libraries. We need the power of really high numbers with this, and it doesn't take much time, doesn't take any money, few minutes of your day to really, really make a difference. So thank you for those who have taken action. What I'm going to do is talk now about the changes in the school curriculum that are coming up. I'm going to be reading some of the documents from the school because I haven't memorized them all yet, and I want to quote from the curriculum so I get you the accurate information. So regarding the school campaigns, I want to let you know the background of the campaign. So it started in April 2018. The National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, the NCCA, were asked to undertake a major review of relationships and sexuality education in primary and post-primary schools to ensure that it was fit for purpose in modern Ireland. Fast forward to December 2019, the NCCA published a report of its review. The NCCA subsequently established two curriculum development groups, one for primary and one for secondary schools, to oversee the development of sexuality education material for schools. The first curriculum to be redeveloped was the junior cycle SPHE short course, and the draft document was published last summer, July 2022. So you may not have heard about these changes, and you may not have been part of the consultation. So you ask, was there a consultation? Yes, a cloak one. While there was a consultation stage where members of the public could submit their views, there was no official invitation given to principals, parents, or teachers to participate in the consultation process. We can be sure that trans right activist groups and government-funded NGOs, such as TENI and Belong To, were informed about the consultation so they could endorse it, right? But it nearly slipped under the radar, except for the significant efforts made by grassroots groups such as Parents' Rights Alliance and the Irish Education Alliance to inform people that the consultation process is taking place. Based on my engagement with people on the ground, the wider public in their heart of hearts disagree with what's happening in libraries and schools. Even people who are in favor of the policy turn against it when they see the evidence for themselves. Why are parents and teachers being silenced and excluded in the proposed curriculum changes? Social forces manipulated by a tiny but powerful ideological minority are preventing wider society from articulating our views. The NCCA has actually refused to give a breakdown of the 4,353 submissions received by parents, and they refused to name the 9 HSE experts referenced in the report who were consulted in writing the draft report on the new sex ed program. Gript Media made over a dozen contacts through phone and emails, and the information was refused. The Social, Personal, and Health Education, SPHE, short course has 37 learning outcomes and is structured around 4 strands. You'll be happy to know that in this 20-minute video, I won't review all 37 outcomes. I will review the ones we have concerns with. It is for 12 to 15-year-olds, which is the first, second, and third year students. It combines relationship and sexuality education, RSE, along with various health topics, all under the heading of SPHE. So now I'll talk about strand 1, which is understanding myself and others. This strand focuses on developing self-awareness and self-esteem and the physical and emotional changes that happen during adolescence. This is all very relevant to the lives of 12 to 15-year-olds. However, in this strand, students will learn about gender identity, which the curriculum defines as, and I quote, a person's felt internal and individual experience of gender. Gender is what they subjectively feel and is distinct from their biological sex, which is the sex assigned to them at birth. Teaching a boy that he can become a girl and a girl that she can become a boy is transgender ideology and not biological fact. I'll now talk about learning outcome 1.4, which states that students should be able to, quote, recognize the factors and influences that shape young people's self-identity, such as family, peers, culture, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, ethnic background, disabilities, religious beliefs, and world views. This is a hugely flawed learning outcome. Gender identity is an ideology, not a biological fact. There are 2 sexes, male and female. Yet the draft curriculum at 1.4 wants to teach gender identity, which deliberately will mislead and confuse our innocent children. This learning outcome should not be included in the specification. The new sex education curriculum is also promoting a model of gender affirmation. How do I know this? I have seen the RSE resources that the NCCA have developed to support this thinking. Teachers have available to them a range of videos in the SPHE RSE toolkit, where students can hear the experiences of young people who identify as transgender or genderqueer, and each one celebrating their gender transition. There are handouts with terms and definitions that exist under the gender umbrella. However, there is not one video resource to show the grave regret that transgender people feel after having transitioned to the opposite sex. The word detransitioner or detransitioning is not even mentioned in the list of definitions. There is not one resource to tell the story of how transgender people have become lifelong patients to pharmaceutical companies. These young people now realize they were sold a lie, and they regret transitioning, and they're now trying to detransition back to their birth sex. I personally met several young men and women at the SPHE conference in Killarney just a couple of weeks ago, who transitioned in their youth through puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and eventually surgeries. To say their stories are heartbreaking would be an understatement, and I commend these brave young people for speaking out. Puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones have irreversible damage, including compromising bone health, preventing maturation of the brain, causing infertility, deteriorating genitalia, and they triple the risk of heart disease. Gender-affirming clinics simply see Euro signs when vulnerable children walk through their door. Up to 90% of Irish people who were seeking gender services may have been autistic, according to an Irish Independent article back in October 2022. Go read the CAST report to see why the Tavistock clinic, the gender reassignment clinic, was shut down. So this begs the question, why is the Department of Education relentlessly pushing gender ideology onto children? I will now talk about strand 3, which is relationships and sexuality. In Learning Outcome 3.6, students should be able to, quote, appreciate the breadth of what constitutes human sexuality and how sexual orientation and gender identity are experienced and expressed in different ways. This is another hugely flawed and dangerous learning outcome, and it should not be on the curriculum. Learning Outcome 3.9 explains the importance of safer sexual activity with reference to methods of contraception and protection against sexually transmitted infections, STIs. The glossary definition in the curriculum document states, quote, sexuality and sexual intimacy is a range of activities from kissing, touching, fondling to sexual intercourse in all of its forms, which involve giving and receiving pleasure. These activities can be solitary or involve other people. This is promoting sexual license and the pursuit of sexual pleasure for its own sake without focusing on the relationship aspects. The preoccupation with sex is the wrong emphasis to be giving school children. The curriculum should reduce the excessive focus on sexual activity and emphasize instead the importance and quality of relationships in the RSE program. Next, I will talk about classes on pornography. Learning Outcome 3.1. The curriculum also, quote, discusses the influence of popular culture and the online world in particular, the influence of pornography on young people's understanding, expectation, and social norms in relation to expression. However, it is not a precautionary approach that is being taken. How do we know this? The NUIG active consent team were co-opted by the NCCA and the Department of Education to devise and deliver consent education as part of the new RSE curriculum. The active consent team includes Dr. Kate Dawson of NUIG, who has said, and I quote, watching porn can be useful as it has very detailed imagery. That was said on her interview on the Ray Darcy show on the 14th of February 2019. This is completely inappropriate for school children. The promotion of pornography must be removed from the Junior Cert SPHE curriculum. Pornography is a huge issue with our young people, but this ethical porn, as it is sometimes described, is not the approach to take. The third concern we have, in addition to the gender ideology and the pornography, is the excessive emphasis on sexual activity. The RSE program developed by the NCCA is highly sexualized and excessive emphasis is on sexual activity. And the fourth concern is that the school ethos is not respected in delivery of the new SPHE RSE curriculum. Can we opt our children out? Well, the NCCA proposes to make highly sexualized RSE education compulsory in all schools, as it is combining RSE, which is the sexuality education, with SPHE, which is the health education, and that is a compulsory subject. So as a result, the RSE element of it is integrated through strand 1 and strand 3. This will make it very difficult for parents to opt their children out from the SPHE class. However, parents can legally opt their children out of this ideology and pornography in accordance with Section 32E of the Education Act of 1998. I highly recommend the letter that Lawyers for Justice Ireland drafted. This can be found on the irisheducationalliance.com website. This letter specifies the topics that the child should not be taught versus just removing them from the program. However, my question is, why should children who have parents against this ideology be the ones excluded? Why should our children have to be removed from their classroom of peers if we don't want them to be taught gender ideology and pornography? How about this for an idea? Why doesn't the Department of Education consider doing it as an opt-in, whereby if a parent wants their child to learn about gender ideology, if the parent wants their boy to learn about becoming a girl and girl becoming a boy and non-binary and whatever else is under the umbrella, why don't those parents opt in and put their children in a separate class to teach this information? We would quickly see how many would sign up for this. I suspect it would be very, very small, because if people had to opt into it, it would require them to read the information, to think about it, and make the moral decision if they want their own children to participate in such classes. An article by Senan Maloney in The Independent on the 13th of July, 2022, quotes a source as stating that every school, irrespective of ethos, will have to deliver it. This is also in line with statements made by senior figures in government over the past year or so. This means that schools with a Christian ethos will be forced to deliver the highly sexualized RSE program, which goes against Christian teaching on sexuality, marriage, and the family. And lastly, the consultation report on the junior cycle SPHE RSE stated, and I quote, "Students and teachers alike expressed a strong view that nothing should be taken out of the draft specification." This is a lie. This statement is misleading and inaccurate. The 300 teachers in the Irish Education Alliance do not agree with this statement. The Catholic Secondary Schools Parents Association, the CSSPA, that represents over 341 schools, do not agree with this statement. And just to mention that the CSSPA, on numerous attempts, asked for representation on the NCCA development body, but their application was rejected every time. This ideological minority is coercing wider society into going along to get along, because the penalty for voicing an opposing or dissenting view is ostracization and labeling. I know this all too well. It speaks to a larger pattern that is emerging, namely the abandonment of the democratic process. Increasingly, we are seeing policies adopted by our government which lack any form of public consultation or community outreach, aka the democratic participation. And if they pass the hate speech laws, speaking out can then be deemed as criminal. Will we be allowed to speak out for our children, or will that be considered hate speech? This should never stop us from speaking up and taking action to protect our children. There are so many questions that I have that have gone unanswered. I'll share with you a few of these. 1, where is the evidence that students, teachers, and parents were demanding this to be brought into school because of an overwhelming demand in dealing with gender confusion? Perhaps it's the €1.5 million it costs to medically transition a child. Sometimes if you follow the money trail, the answers come. My second question is, are the Irish people really full of hate and transphobia, as the government claims to justify bringing this into schools? It's part of the Irish identity to be kind. Ireland is the land of 100,000 welcomes. The Irish are not a hateful group. I'm American, living in Ireland 20 years. I've lived in several different countries and worked in a few. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, that the Irish people are some of the most welcoming, kind humans I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. It's reprehensible that our kindness and empathy is being hijacked and children are now under attack. My third question is, why push an ideology on all children when a very, very small percentage will suffer from the psychiatric condition known as gender dysphoria? These children need one-to-one support and love. They need help from experts and their parents. Teachers are not equipped to deliver this, and nor should they. And all children should not be led into this social contagion. My fourth question is, where is the risk assessment in bringing gender identity and pornography into schools? We'll be doing some Freedom of Information Act requests to get to the bottom of this. We'd like to know who's funding it, where's the risk assessment, and who's liable if a child gets damaged mentally or physically if they go down the path of puberty blockers and surgeries based on what they were told in school. So watch this space for those Freedom of Information requests that our groups are doing. And my fifth question is, how can the Department of Education ignore the Children First Act of 2015, particularly, and I quote, showing sexually explicit material to children, which is often a feature of the grooming process by perpetrators of abuse, and, quote, seriously inappropriate expectations of a child relative to his or her age and stage of development. The government have turned their back on the Irish people. Instead of listening to our valid concerns, they are handing over our public funds to NGOs to push this radical political agenda. The government in Ireland is manufacturing a culture war. They're hijacking our compassion, our empathy, and our humanity. They are exploiting the good nature of Irish people, trying to do this under the guise of kindness and inclusivity. And now they are going after our children's innocence through public libraries and the public school system. Propaganda often uses emotional appeals and oversimplifications to manipulate people's opinions, which can lead to an erosion of critical thinking and a lack of nuance in public discourse. An example of such propaganda is the coordinated labeling of parents like us, who are somehow far right, simply because we have genuine concerns for issues that will impact our children's well-being and future. In other words, it is the deliberate removal of nuanced discourse and the use of sweeping generalizations in order to discredit and disparage any narrative contrary to the propaganda. A sleight of hand such as this also provides a mechanism for those in power to legitimize the disconnect between the political system and the lives and concerns of the constituents who they have been elected to serve. So what I ask is that all of you stand up, without fear, without compromise. Please don't worry about these cheap, empty labels. They simply throw these at us in an attempt to wear us down and to silence us. The love I have for my two beautiful children is much stronger than any label anyone can throw at me or any abuse I get. Being silenced is complicit. And speaking of abuse, you may have seen on social media going around the last couple of days at the peaceful assembly we hosted outside the Department of Education. There was a man who ran up to where I was speaking and threw a bucket of an unknown substance at me. I got quite wet. A lot of it went on the sign because a sign someone was holding protected me from that. So thanks to Andy for holding that sign and stopping all of that from going over my head. We didn't know what it was. There have been cases around the world of people throwing acid, and you have someone throwing liquid on you. We certainly didn't know what it was. Thankfully, it was only a bucket of water. The man ran off, chased down the road, and apparently there was an altercation there. I have presented myself at the Garda station yesterday following the event, talked through the situation with the Garda, and it is deemed as a minor assault because liquid was thrown on me and landed on me. So I have a further meeting with the Garda next week. It's gone to the DPP, and myself and my solicitor will be pushing this just as far as we can. On one end, there can't be someone saying that we're hateful for talking about child protection, but think it's okay to run across and pour water on my head. The hypocrisy in that action is so thick. And we absolutely will take it to the limit and set a precedence that we do not condone violence or hate in any way towards a woman or a man or anyone speaking to particularly about protecting childhood. So more to follow on that. So please speak up. There are so many out there to support you with the knowledge and tools to empower you. Follow Natural Women's Council on Telegram, Irish Education Alliance on their website and Twitter, the Parents' Rights Alliance on their website, Twitter, and also Lawyers for Justice on Telegram, Twitter, and Facebook. I work very closely with these 3 other groups, and they do absolutely amazing work to give you the tools that you need. But what we really need is the power of public pushback in great numbers. So please talk to every friend, talk to every parent at the school gate, talk to your neighbors. If you go to church, talk to the parishioners, talk to your priest. Get the word out. There are still people who do not know these changes are coming. Feel free to share this link with them as well for the specifics on the curriculum. Send the opt-out letter to your school to protect your own children from the ideology and pornography. We also are going to get a few thousand flyers to print. I will post the Go Get Funding link shortly on my Twitter page, which is JKLUNDEN on Twitter. I'm in the process of building a website, but for now, again, the campaigns are on the irisheducationalliance.com because we work hand in hand with that wonderful group of teachers. We're also going to try to work a little bit smarter, not harder. Going out on the streets and traveling and organizing events is time consuming and costly. So we're going to look to do things like on Twitter Spaces and podcasts to get the word out. And I'd like to end on how you as a parent can help your own children. Teach your children to be kind. Children are naturally kind. They're born full. We don't need to fill them up. Children don't discriminate. Teach your children to be critical thinkers. Praise your children for questioning that which doesn't make sense. For example, if someone told your child that there was a pig flying across the sky, or if someone told your child that biological sex could be changed, teach them to ask questions when things don't make sense and challenge those things. Teach your children to love their bodies and love their authentic self. Love how they were born. We are winning. They have pushed this too far. This will collapse, but we really need to keep the pressure on. We need to keep shining our light into the darkness and protect childhood. Please speak up. Please take action.